We got a very exciting card coming up this week. Al, do you want to take the honors on that?
Yeah, well, Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. It's one where it's one of those fights where you probably think that Usman, 7 or 6.5 times out of 10, Usman probably wins that fight. But it all depends on where this line goes, and if you can get value on a fighter that maybe wins, 4 out of 6 times or 4 out of 10 times. I think Gilbert Burns might be the play here, and it's one of those plays where you'd have to bet it small because I wouldn't be. It's a value play, right? It's not. Kamaru Usman I think he's elite. Like, I think he's one of the best to ever do it, but there's still some question marks, right? There's still a couple of question marks, and especially now because we've seen Covington. I kind of just throw out the Masvidal fight, but we see how Covington approached it and how that will not work against Kamaru Usman. I think that if Gilbert Burns does what he's done in his previous fights, it's hard to gauge him even as well, because the Tyrone Woodley fight Tyrone Woodley really wasn't the same. It was just not the same guy. He at least wasn't the same guy that he was when he fought Kamaru, right? So I feel like it's one of those fights where Kamaru Usman probably wins, but if the line gets heavy enough where there's value on Gilbert Burns, I think you got to bet Burns. But I would say that there's more value on the over. The over probably cashes in this fight. I don't think this fight probably likely goes the distance. Kamaru Usman has a chin, like he's got a granite chin. The thing about him is he has such good balance that even when he does get rocked, he's really good at staying upright, and he's just really strong in his lower body. And I don't know if he has the finishing power to put out Burns. And then this is another thing, is that Gilbert Burns is a great BJJ guy. So it's this BJJ versus wrestling type thing. And wrestlers don't like being put on their back. And I feel like if Burns kind of does what Beneil Dariush did to Faea, where he just smothers him and stays on top of him and doesn't let him get up, there could be a path to victory for Gilbert Burns. But again, Kamaru Usman, man, it's hard to even say that. I say that, and then as soon as Kamaru gets on his back, he just sweeps Burns and gets back on top of him. So it's tough. It's a tough. I'm not confident enough to bet Kamaru Usman at what -230 it is right now. I wouldn't do that. I feel like the value in this fight is on the over. This fight is going to go the distance. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first off, it's a super intriguing matchup. We're talking about two guys who are training partners, or at least were. Usman actually took off and is now training in Colorado. It's usually when the champ's at the gym, the challenger who's also at the gym needs to be the one to take off, and not throw off the champion's vibe. But yeah, it's a great fight, and what I think about is Gilbert Burns. First off, he's just on an incredible tear. He's a new guy, but he is a former lightweight, and we're talking about a welterweight fight. And we're talking about an absolutely huge, dominating, ultra strong maybe the strongest welterweight in Kamaru Usman, and probably the best offensive wrestler at welterweight in Kamaru Usman. But I do say to myself, we saw Colby Covington fight Kamaru Usman, and both guys are the best wrestlers at 170. The fight played out entirely on the feet. We're talking about, Usman incredible wrestling with the incredible BJJ of Gilbert Burns. I have a feeling this fight can end up playing out entirely on the feet. Both guys respecting the ability of either guy and the danger of either guy on the ground. You know what I mean? I think I lean advantage Usman in the striking. Burns has big power, but I don't think it's quite as crisp. I don't think he throws many straight punches, like the knockout of Damian Maia, spectacular knockout, but big winging, looping shots. I don't see Kamaru Usman being there to be hit with shots like that. But here's the big thing for me. And don't get me wrong, I got to go a ways back, and I got to go another division down, but in a way that almost adds credibility to the point I'm about to make. Gilbert Burns, a few years ago, fought Michel Prazeres and Rashid Magomedov in 2 of 3 fights. He had a win over Lucas Sajewski. You guys remember Lucas Sajewski? No, nobody does. He's not in the UFC anymore. But the first loss of his career was to Rashid Magomedov, the Dagestani with incredible wrestling, right? Just got taken down, got held down, never could hit the sub off his back. That's how the fight played out. Rashid Magomedov wins by unanimous decision, gets the win over Lucas, then comes back to Michel Prazeres, one of the smallest lightweights out there. Now, don't get me wrong, an absolute tree stump of pure muscle and PEDs. And again, Gilbert Burns gets taken down, gets controlled. What I'm saying is if lightweights out there in the world, not even guys that I'm rating as the best lightweight wrestlers, if they can hold you down, and again, this is a long time ago. I know Gilbert Burns is a changed man. I know he's much better. But wow, he's going to have really, really, really improved to have been so thoroughly controlled by guys on that level, and then to go up to what, in my opinion, is the absolute highest level in a division against a guy in Usman that's so much bigger, so much stronger, and technically so much better than both those guys. I just don't see Usman losing this fight. I think it's going to have to be Burns landing a very key, crisp shot, because I do think Usman dominates in the grappling component of the fight. I think he absolutely wrestles and takedowns Burns at will. And I think he's the better, crisper striker as well. I just think that he's just better in every area of the game outside of probably a pure jiu-jitsu standpoint. But one thing we know in MMA, a very strong wrestler with a brilliant top game can usually nullify any of the threats that a high-level jiu-jitsu guy poses off their back. However, we've seen quite a few wrestlers get snatched up in some triangles. It happens, but Usman's never been subbed. Usman's just never lost a fight in the UFC, and I'm gonna be backing him here. I got Usman getting the win here, but not too in love with that line. Would love to see all that money. I see some people in the chat. Do me a favor, boys. Get that money in on Burns. I'm trying to get Usman at a better line. So I understand the underdog play on Burns. Absolutely. He's a very good fighter, but I do think Usman is just on another level as it stands right now.
Yeah, and you might have just talked me into the Usman side a little bit more.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's just it just comes down to strength, and I feel like that even if, like I said, Usman wrestlers don't like being on their back, but I feel like Usman's the type of guy that he'll just be able to strength out of it and sweep. It's almost as if if Gilbert Burns goes and lands a takedown on Usman, that Usman is almost as dangerous on the ground as he is on the feet.
Oh yeah,
he's got a bigger frame than Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is a big guy too, but Kamaru Usman, man, is on a different level. I think it's just that price tag is, I wouldn't, if it got down closer to minus 225 or minus 220, I would think about it. But if it gets, if you're getting almost 2-to-1 odds on Gilbert Burns, I think you gotta, it's dog or pass, but it's a tough one. It's such a tough one. And it's interesting because you're right. This fight will probably just be a classic wrestler versus grappler, where it's a boxing match for 25 minutes. That's probably what's going to happen. And I give that edge to Usman. Yeah, and I think his chin, he's got a granite chin, and we've seen Burns get knocked out. So yeah, you might have just talked me into it.
Oh man. Hey, I'm a convincing guy. What can I say? All right. Well, there you go. That's a little look into next week, UFC 258. It's hard to believe we're already back to a UFC pay-per-view card, man.